I spent 6 months saving every extra dollar, skipping nights out with friends, eating ramen for lunch, all to afford the perfect engagement ring for the woman I thought was my soulmate. The moment I walked out of Austin Jewelers with that little velvet box, I felt like I was holding our entire future in my hands. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 years together, countless conversations about marriage, and she'd even sent me screenshots of rings she liked. I was so confident, so ready to start forever with Chloe Peterson. But the second she realized I had something serious to ask, she vanished from my life like I'd become toxic overnight. What I discovered next didn't just break my heart, it shattered every belief I had about love, loyalty, and what people are really capable of when they think you're not watching. The story begins on a humid Austin morning in March, when I finally worked up the courage to walk into that jewelry store downtown. My name's Jake Martinez, and at 28, I thought I had life figured out. I was a senior developer at InnovateTech, pulling decent money working on mobile apps, living in a downtown loft that I'd deliberately chosen because Chloe loved the exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows. She'd practically moved in over the past year, leaving her skincare products scattered across my bathroom counter and her yoga mats rolled up in my living room corner. Chloe was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. She worked as a social media marketing manager at Glow Beauty Co., one of those trendy cosmetics companies that seem to dominate every woman's Instagram feed. She was gorgeous, obviously, with this effortless style that made every photo look like it belonged in a magazine. Her apartment in East Austin was the kind of place that got featured in those Austin living blogs, all perfectly curated plants, and vintage furniture that somehow managed to look both lived in and pristine. We'd been together for 3 years, and honestly, those first 2 years felt like a fairy tale. She'd bring me coffee from this little independent place called Maya's Brew when I was pulling late nights coding. We'd spend Sunday mornings at the farmer's market, her picking out ingredients for elaborate brunches while I carried her reusable bags, and listened to her explain the difference between various types of organic kale. She had this way of making even mundane activities feel special, like we were the main characters in some romantic movie about young professionals in love. The ring hunting process started innocently enough. Chloe had been dropping hints since our second anniversary. Nothing too obvious, just casual comments about her coworkers' engagement photos or how beautiful someone's wedding looked on Instagram. Then came the screenshots. She'd send me pictures of rings with messages like, "Isn't this gorgeous?" or "This style is so timeless." I'd saved every single one, creating a secret folder in my phone called Future that I'd scroll through during my lunch breaks, imagining the moment I'd slide one of those rings onto her finger. The ring I finally chose was a classic solitaire with a round, brilliant diamond, exactly the style she'd shown me the most. The jeweler, an older man named Mr. Rodriguez who'd been running Austin Jewelers for 30 years, spent almost 2 hours with me explaining cut grades and clarity ratings. $8,000 was more money than I'd ever spent on anything except my car. But watching him carefully place that ring in its velvet box, I felt this overwhelming sense of rightness. This was it. This was the moment my real adult life would begin. I had the proposal planned down to the minute. Hill Country Steakhouse, the restaurant where we'd had our first anniversary dinner. I'd already called and arranged for our old table, the one by the window overlooking the Austin skyline. The ring box felt like it was burning a hole in my jacket pocket as I walked out of the jewelry store that day. But it was a good burn, the kind that made me feel like I was finally becoming the man I'd always wanted to be. But something strange happened the moment I got home. Chloe was there, as usual, working on her laptop at my kitchen island, probably editing content for Glow Beauty's Instagram account. She looked up when I walked in, and I swear I saw something flicker across her face. Not excitement or curiosity about where I'd been, but something that looked almost like panic. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice carrying that slightly forced cheerfulness she used when she was stressed about work. "How was your day?" I almost told her right then. The words were right there, ready to spill out along with all my excitement and plans. But something about her expression made me hesitate. She looked like she was bracing for bad news. "Good," I said instead. "Just had some errands to run downtown." She nodded and turned back to her laptop, but I noticed her shoulders remained tense. That night she claimed she wasn't feeling well and went home to her own apartment, something she rarely did anymore. It was the first crack in what would become a complete collapse of everything I thought I knew about our relationship. Over the next few days, Chloe became a master of avoidance. Suddenly, she was swamped with work projects that required late nights at the office. Her phone was always dying when I tried to call. She'd respond to my texts hours later with short, distracted messages. When we did see each other, she seemed jumpy, like she was constantly checking for escape routes. I started wondering if somehow she'd found out about the ring. Maybe Mr. Rodriguez had called while she was at my place, or maybe she'd seen the jeweler's business card in my wallet. The thought actually excited me at first. Maybe she was just nervous, maybe she was planning something special for when I finally popped the question. But as days turned into weeks, her avoidance became impossible to ignore. The breaking point came 3 weeks later at Tyler Brooks' birthday party. Tyler was this personal trainer I'd met at Fit Life Austin, the gym where I'd been working out for the past year. He was one of those guys who seemed to exist in a completely different universe than the rest of us. All chiseled abs and motivational Instagram posts about crushing your limits and becoming the best version of yourself. His social media presence was massive, with hundreds of thousands of followers watching his workout videos and lifestyle content. I'd invited Chloe to Tyler's party because I thought it might be a good opportunity for us to have fun together, maybe break through whatever weird tension had been building between us. The party was at this trendy rooftop bar downtown, the kind of place where everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Tyler had gone all out, with professional photographers capturing every moment for his social media content. Chloe agreed to come. But the moment we arrived, something shifted. She practically lit up when she saw Tyler, giving him this huge hug and gushing about how amazing the party looked. She spent the entire night gravitating toward him, laughing at his jokes, posing for pictures that ended up on his Instagram story. I found myself standing alone by the bar, watching my girlfriend of 3 years act like she was meeting her celebrity crush. What really got to me was how natural they looked together. Tyler had this effortless confidence that made everyone around him seem more interesting by association. He knew exactly how to angle his phone for the perfect selfie, how to make every conversation sound like content worth sharing. Chloe was in her element, her marketing background making her the perfect complement to his influencer lifestyle. I tried to brush it off as Chloe just being social, networking for her job. She worked in social media marketing after all. It made sense that she'd be drawn to someone with Tyler's kind of online presence. But watching them together that night, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. They had a chemistry that Chloe and I hadn't had in months, maybe longer. When I suggested we leave around midnight, Chloe barely looked at me. "Oh, I'm going to stay a little longer," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Ashley's here, and we haven't caught up in forever." Ashley Kim was her best friend and roommate, a fellow social media manager who seemed to live in a permanent state of analysis about whose relationships were goals and whose were red flags. I left the party alone, driving through empty Austin, streets with the ring box still hidden in my bedroom drawer, and a growing certainty that something fundamental had changed. That night, lying awake in my bed that suddenly felt too big, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to propose within the week, before whatever was happening between us got any worse. But Chloe had other plans. The next morning, she texted me that she needed some space to think about things. Not a breakup, she was careful to clarify. Just some time to figure out what she wanted. She'd been feeling overwhelmed with work, she said, and she needed to focus on herself for a while. I stared at that text message for probably 20 minutes, reading it over and over like the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. 3 years together, and now she needed space. The ring box seemed to mock me from across the room, this symbol of a future that was apparently more uncertain than I'd realized. My sister Emma called that afternoon, her voice bright with excitement. "So when are you going to pop the question?" she asked. "Mom's been asking me every day if I've heard anything." I couldn't bring myself to tell her about Chloe's sudden need for space, so I deflected. "Soon," I said. "I'm just waiting for the right moment." "Jake, you've been waiting for the right moment for months," Emma laughed. "Sometimes you just have to jump. She's crazy about you. Anyone can see that." If only she knew how wrong she was. That evening, I found myself walking aimlessly through downtown Austin, past all the places that had become meaningful to Chloe and me over the years. The coffee shop where we'd had our first date, the vintage store where she'd found a leather jacket she wore constantly, the food truck where we'd shared late-night tacos after concerts. Everything felt different now, like I was looking at artifacts from someone else's life. I ended up at Maya's Brew, the independent coffee shop where Chloe used to buy my favorite dark roast. It was one of those cozy places that felt like someone's living room, with mismatched furniture and local art covering the walls. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story. The owner, Maya Chen, was working behind the counter as usual. She was around our age, with this quiet intensity that made her seem older and wiser than 27. "The usual?" she asked when I approached the counter. But then she really looked at me. "Actually, you look like you need something stronger than coffee." Maya had this way of reading people that was almost unsettling. She'd been running the cafe for 3 years, ever since her parents had helped her buy out the previous owner, and she seemed to remember every customer's story. I'd been coming in regularly for over a year, usually with Chloe, sometimes alone, when I needed a quiet place to work on code. "Rough day," I admitted, settling onto one of the worn leather stools at the counter. "Want to talk about it?" she asked, starting to prepare my coffee without being asked. I'm basically a therapist who happens to serve excellent espresso. There was something about Maya's straightforward kindness that made me want to tell her everything. Maybe it was because she felt safe, neutral. She knew Chloe casually but wasn't part of our social circle. She'd seen us together dozens of times but had no stake in whether we stayed together or broke up. "How do you know when someone's pulling away from you?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. Maya paused in her coffee preparation, considering the question seriously. "I guess it depends on why they're pulling away," she said finally. "Sometimes people retreat because they're scared of something good. But sometimes they retreat because they've already moved towards something else." Her words hit me like a physical blow, crystallizing a fear I'd been trying to ignore. What if Chloe wasn't just having cold feet about our relationship? What if she'd already found something better? "The thing is," Maya continued, setting my coffee in front of me, "you can't make someone want to be close to you. You can be the most amazing partner in the world, but if they've decided they want something different, all your efforts just push them further away." I spent the next hour telling Maya everything. About the ring, about Chloe's sudden distance, about Tyler's party, and the way Chloe had seemed like a different person around him. Maya listened without judgment, occasionally asking gentle questions that helped me untangle my thoughts. "It sounds like you're trying to save something that might already be over," she said finally. "The question is, what are you going to do with that information?" I left the coffee shop that night with more clarity than I'd had in weeks, but also with a decision that terrified me. I was going to propose to Chloe, not because I thought it would fix our problems, but because I needed to know definitively where we stood. If she said yes, we'd work through whatever was causing her to pull away. If she said no, at least I'd have my answer. What I didn't expect was that the universe had a completely different plan in store for me, one that would turn everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and my own worth completely upside down. The ring in my drawer was about to become the catalyst for the most painful and ultimately liberating experience of my life. Looking back now, I can see that those weeks of Chloe's avoidance were actually a gift, though it didn't feel like it at the time. She was showing me exactly who she was and what I meant to her, but I was too invested in the story I'd created about our future to pay attention to the reality of our present. I was about to learn that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you turns out to be the exact thing you needed to discover who you really are and what you actually deserve. The next 2 weeks became a masterclass in self-deception. I convinced myself that Chloe's request for space was actually a sign that she was getting ready for something bigger, maybe even expecting a proposal. Women got nervous before major life changes, right? Emma had told me stories about her friends, who became distant and moody right before their boyfriends proposed, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what marriage represented. So I threw myself into being the perfect supportive boyfriend. I respected her space while simultaneously trying to prove my worth through grand gestures that probably only pushed her further away. I had flowers delivered to her office at Glow Beauty Codiste, not just once but 3 times that week. Each arrangement was more elaborate than the last, accompanied by handwritten notes about how much I loved her and how excited I was about our future together. The first delivery seemed to please her. She texted me a photo of the bouquet with a simple, "Thank you, they're beautiful." But by the third delivery, her response was noticeably cooler. "Jake, you really don't need to keep sending flowers. I'm just busy with work right now." I should have heard the message in her words, but instead I heard what I wanted to hear. She was stressed about work, that was all. Once this busy period passed, we'd get back to normal. I started showing up at her favorite yoga studio, timing my arrivals for when her classes ended, hoping to catch her for impromptu coffee dates. She seemed surprised to see me the first time, almost startled, but she agreed to grab smoothies at the juice bar next door. "You don't need to rearrange your schedule for me," she said, sipping her green concoction while scrolling through her phone. "I know you're busy with that new app launch at work." "I'm never too busy for you," I replied, meaning every word. "Besides, I like seeing you in your element. You look so peaceful after yoga." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Jake, I meant what I said about needing some space. This," she gestured between us. "Showing up at my yoga studio, the constant flowers. It's a lot right now." I felt my chest tighten, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was being overwhelming. I just miss you. We barely see each other anymore." "I know, and I appreciate how patient you're being," she said, finally putting her phone down and making eye contact. "It's just that I'm trying to figure some things out, and when you're constantly around, it's hard for me to think clearly." Figure what out? The question burned in my throat, but I didn't ask it. Instead, I nodded like I understood. Like giving your girlfriend of 3 years space to figure things out was a perfectly normal request that didn't make your stomach feel like it was full of broken glass. That night, I called my best friend Ryan Walsh, who'd been my roommate in college and remained my most trusted confidant. Ryan worked in marketing for a tech company downtown, and he'd always been the more socially intuitive one between us. If anyone could help me decode what was happening with Chloe, it would be him. "Dude, I hate to say this, but it sounds like she's either having serious second thoughts about your relationship or she's already mentally checked out," Ryan said after I'd explained the situation. "The space thing is usually code for, I want to explore other options without technically cheating." "That's not Chloe," I protested, even as part of me wondered if Ryan might be right. "She's not the type to play games. If she wanted to break up, she'd just tell me." "Would she, though?" Ryan asked gently. "Think about it. You guys have been together for 3 years. You live in the same social circles. She probably knows you've been thinking about proposing. Breaking up is messy and complicated. It's easier to create distance and hope you get the hint." I wanted to argue with him, but Ryan's words echoed thoughts I'd been trying to suppress. Still, I wasn't ready to give up. What if you're wrong? What if she's just overwhelmed and needs time to process her feelings? "Then she'll come back to you," Ryan said. "But Jake, you can't force someone to want you. The harder you chase, the faster they run." Despite Ryan's advice, I couldn't stop myself from trying. The ring box in my bedroom drawer felt like a ticking time bomb, this symbol of hope and commitment that I couldn't bring myself to return to the store. Every morning, I'd look at it and think about the conversation we'd had about wanting to get married, the way Chloe had talked about our future like it was inevitable. People didn't just stop wanting those things overnight, did they? I decided to plan the perfect romantic evening, something that would remind Chloe why we fell in love in the first place. I made reservations at this new farm-to-table restaurant that had been getting incredible reviews, the kind of place she loved to post about on Instagram. I bought tickets to see her favorite band at Stubbs Bar BQ afterward. I even arranged for a car service so she wouldn't have to worry about parking or driving. When I called to invite her, Chloe was quiet for a long moment. "That sounds really nice, Jake, but I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that right now." "It's just dinner and a concert," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "Remember how much you loved their last album? You played it constantly for weeks." "I know, and I do want to see them, but..." She trailed off, and I could hear voices in the background. "Actually, can I call you back? I'm at lunch with Ashley and some people from work." She hung up before I could respond, leaving me standing in my empty apartment with 2 expensive tickets and a dinner reservation I'd probably have to cancel. But I didn't cancel it. Some stubborn part of me believed that if I just waited, if I gave her enough time and space, she'd remember what we had together. 2 days later, I was scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break when I saw it. A story post from Tyler Brooks, taken at what looked like the exact restaurant where I'd made reservations. He was sitting across from someone whose face was partially obscured by the angle, but I recognized that lavender sweater immediately. It was the one I'd bought Chloe for her birthday, the one she'd said made her feel beautiful. My hands started shaking as I screenshotted the image, zooming in to confirm what I already knew. Chloe was having lunch with Tyler, looking relaxed, and happy in a way I hadn't seen her in weeks. She was leaning forward, engaged in whatever he was saying, her smile bright and genuine. I stared at that screenshot for probably 10 minutes, my mind racing through every possible innocent explanation. Maybe it was a work thing. Maybe Ashley had set them up as friends. Maybe Tyler was dating someone else and had asked Chloe for advice. But even as I invented these scenarios, I knew I was lying to myself. That evening, I did something I'd never done before in our entire relationship. I drove to Chloe's apartment and parked across the street, waiting to see if she was home. I felt like a stalker sitting there in my car, but I needed to know the truth. Her Honda Civic wasn't in its usual spot, and her apartment windows were dark. Around 9 p.m., I saw Tyler's lifted truck pull into the parking lot. My heart hammered as I watched Chloe get out of the passenger side, laughing at something Tyler had said. They stood by his truck for several minutes, talking animatedly, and I could see even from a distance that this wasn't the body language of casual friends. When Tyler leaned down to hug her goodbye, the embrace lasted far longer than it should have. Even worse, when he finally pulled away, Chloe stood on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek, her hand lingering on his arm. I sat in my car for another hour. After Tyler drove away and Chloe disappeared into her building, trying to process what I'd witnessed. This wasn't my imagination or paranoia. Chloe was involved with Tyler, and I'd been too blind or too desperate to see it. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day walking around Austin, trying to figure out what to do with this information. I found myself back at Maya's brew, ordering coffee I didn't really want just to have somewhere to sit and think. "You look like someone who's been hit by a truck," Maya observed, setting my usual order in front of me without being asked. "I think I might have been," I admitted. "Do you ever have those moments where you realize you've been living in complete denial about something obvious?" Maya wiped down the counter thoughtfully. "I've learned that people will show you who they are if you're willing to see it. The hard part is accepting what you see instead of what you want to see." I told her about the Instagram story, about seeing Chloe with Tyler the night before. Maya listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned as the story unfolded. "What are you going to do?" she asked when I finished. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Part of me wants to confront her, but what if I'm wrong? What if there's an innocent explanation?" "And what if there isn't?" Maya asked quietly. "What if you're right and she's been seeing him while asking you for space? What would that mean for how you see your relationship?" I couldn't answer that question because acknowledging what it would mean felt like admitting that the last 3 years of my life had been built on something false. Instead, I decided to give Chloe one more chance to tell me the truth. That evening, I texted her asking if we could talk. She agreed to meet me at a quiet bar downtown, somewhere neutral where we could have a serious conversation. I arrived early and sat at a corner table, the engagement ring box hidden in my jacket, pocket like some kind of talisman. When Chloe walked in, she looked beautiful but tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. She ordered a glass of wine and settled across from me with the careful posture of someone preparing for an unpleasant conversation. "You wanted to talk," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I'd rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, but now that we were face to face, all my planned words disappeared. "I miss you," I said simply. "I miss us. It feels like you've been pulling away for weeks, and I can't figure out what I did wrong." Chloe's expression softened slightly. "You didn't do anything wrong, Jake. That's what makes this so hard." "Makes what so hard?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. She was quiet for a long moment, swirling her wine, and staring into the glass like it might contain the words she needed. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about what I want my life to look like, and I'm not sure I'm ready for the kind of serious commitment I know you want. What kind of commitment? I asked, my hand instinctively moving toward my jacket pocket where the ring waited. Marriage, kids, the whole traditional path, she said. You're ready for all of that. I can tell. You're at a place in your life where you want to settle down and build something stable, but I'm not sure that's what I want right now. I felt like she was reading from a script, delivering lines she'd practiced. When did you realize this? I asked. Because a few months ago, you were showing me pictures of wedding venues. I know, and I thought I wanted those things too, she said. But lately I've been feeling like maybe I've been going along with what I thought I should want, instead of figuring out what I actually want. It was a reasonable explanation, the kind of self-reflection that sounded mature and thoughtful, but something about the way she delivered it felt hollow. Like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Is there someone else? I asked, the question escaping before I could stop myself. Chloe's pause was a fraction of a second too long. No, she said. This isn't about someone else. This is about me needing to figure out who I am outside of this relationship. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to accept her explanation and give her the space she was asking for. But I couldn't shake the image of her laughing with Tyler. The way she'd kissed his cheek. The comfort and familiarity in their body language. Okay, I said finally. How much space do you need? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe we should take a real break for a while. Stop texting every day, stop trying to see each other. Just give each other room to breathe and figure things out. A break. The word felt like a euphemism for something more final, but I nodded anyway. If that's what you need. We finished our drinks in awkward silence, both of us avoiding the weight of what we'd just agreed to. When Chloe hugged me goodbye outside, the bar, it felt like she was saying farewell to more than just the evening. I drove home with the ring box still in my pocket, feeling like I'd just agreed to my own execution. A break could mean anything from a few weeks apart to the slow death of our relationship, and I had no idea which one Chloe had in mind. That night, I called Emma and told her about the conversation. She was quiet for a long time after I finished, explaining. Jake, she said finally, I love you, but I think you're being naive. When someone asks for a break to figure things out, they usually already know what they want to figure out. They just want permission to pursue it without feeling guilty. You think I should fight for her? I asked. I think you should respect yourself enough to recognize when someone is trying to let you down easy, Emma said gently. Chloe's a smart woman. If she wanted to marry you, she wouldn't need space to figure that out. After hanging up with Emma, I sat on my couch staring at the ring box, finally allowing myself to consider the possibility that this wasn't just a rough patch we'd worked through. Maybe this was the end, and I'd been too scared or too stubborn to see it coming. But even as that thought crystallized in my mind, I wasn't ready to give up. I decided to give Chloe the space she'd asked for, but I also decided to do some investigating, of my own. If she was being honest about needing time to figure herself out, then I'd wait. But if she was using this break as cover to pursue something with Tyler, I deserved to know the truth. What I discovered over the next few weeks would shatter not just my relationship with Chloe, but my understanding of the person I'd loved for 3 years and the friends I'd trusted to have my back. The ring in my drawer was about to become the least of my concerns as I uncovered a web of deception that ran much deeper than I'd ever imagined. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer 3 days into our official break. I was grabbing lunch at this food truck near my office when I heard Tyler's distinctive laugh echoing from the seating area behind me. Austin's downtown wasn't huge, and running into people you knew was inevitable, but something made me pause instead of walking away. I can't believe how easy this has been, Tyler was saying to someone. She's been texting me constantly since she told him they needed space. It's like she was just waiting for permission. I felt my blood turn to ice as I recognized the voice responding to him. It was Ashley Kim, Chloe's best friend and roommate, the one who was supposed to be looking out for Chloe's best interests. Well, you are exactly what she needs right now, Ashley said. Jake's sweet, but he's so serious about everything. Marriage, kids, building a life together. Chloe's 26, she should be having fun, not planning her retirement. The guy bought her an engagement ring, Tyler said, and I heard Ashley gasp dramatically. Yeah, she found the receipt in his jacket pocket weeks ago. Can you imagine? 3 years together, and he thinks that means she's ready to be his housewife. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped my burrito. Chloe had known about the ring this entire time. Her sudden need for space, her distance, her claims about needing to figure herself out. It was all because she'd discovered my plan to propose and panicked. Poor Jake, Ashley said, but her tone suggested she didn't feel sorry for me at all. He's probably sitting at home thinking she just needs time to miss him or something. Actually, I think he might be catching on, Tyler said. Chloe said, he seemed suspicious when they talked the other night, asked if there was someone else. What did she tell him? What do you think? She denied everything. But she's getting tired of sneaking around. She wants to make this official soon. I stood there in the Texas heat, people flowing around me as I processed what I'd just heard. Chloe hadn't just found someone else. She'd been planning her exit strategy for weeks while letting me believe we were just going through a rough patch. She'd found the ring receipt, and instead of talking to me about her feelings, she'd decided to explore her options with Tyler while keeping me as a backup plan. The humiliation burned worse than the heartbreak. I thought about all the flowers I'd sent, all the times I'd shown up at her yoga studio, the careful way I'd respected her need for space while she was using that space to build a relationship with another man. I'd been playing a game where I didn't even know the rules had changed. I walked back to my office in a daze, Tyler and Ashley's words echoing in my head. When I got to my desk, I pulled out my phone and did something I'd never done before. I unfollowed Chloe on Instagram, then went a step further and muted her stories so I wouldn't accidentally see updates about her life. It was a small act of self-preservation, but it felt like the first decision I'd made in weeks that was actually for my own benefit. That evening, I found myself back at Maya's Brew, even though I'd already had too much caffeine for one day. The cafe was nearly empty, just Maya cleaning up behind the counter, and one other customer working on a laptop in the corner. Rough day, Maya asked when she saw me walk in. Enlightening day, I corrected, settling onto my usual stool. Turns out my girlfriend's been planning her escape from our relationship while I've been planning our engagement. Maya stopped wiping down the espresso machine and looked at me with genuine concern. What happened? I told her about overhearing. Tyler and Ashley, about Chloe finding the ring receipt and using it as motivation to explore other options rather than have an honest conversation with me. Maya listened with the same careful attention she always gave her customers, but I could see anger flickering in her dark eyes. So, she's been lying to you for weeks, Maya said when I finished. Not just about seeing Tyler, but about her reasons for needing space. Apparently so, I said. The worst part is how stupid I feel. All those flowers, all those attempts to be supportive and understanding. I was trying to save a relationship that she'd already decided to end. Maya was quiet, for a moment, finishing her cleaning while she processed what I'd told her. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Sure. What are you going to do now? Are you going to confront her, or are you going to keep pretending you don't know? It was a fair question, and one I'd been avoiding thinking about. Part of me wanted to call Chloe immediately and demand an explanation. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger by the minute, wondered what the point would be. She'd already shown me who she was and what I meant to her. Confronting her would just give her another opportunity to lie or manipulate the situation. I don't know, I admitted. What would you do? Maya leaned against the counter, considering the question seriously. I think I'd want to know exactly what I was dealing with before I made any big decisions. Right now you have pieces of the puzzle, but you don't have the whole picture. You mean I should find out more before I do anything? I mean, you should protect yourself, Maya said firmly. You've been operating under the assumption that Chloe cares about your feelings and wants what's best for both of you. But if she's been planning this exit strategy for weeks, then you need to start thinking strategically too. The word strategically hit me like a revelation. For 3 years, I'd approached our relationship with complete honesty and vulnerability, assuming Chloe was doing the same. But if she was capable of this level of deception, then maybe it was time for me to start protecting my own interests. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I opened my laptop and started researching Tyler Brooks. Not casual social media browsing, but real research. I looked up his business, his social media engagement rates, his past relationships. What I found was illuminating. Tyler's fitness influencer brand was built on aspirational lifestyle content. Perfect workouts, perfect meals, perfect relationships with beautiful women who enhanced his image. His ex-girlfriend before Chloe had been a yoga instructor with a significant Instagram following. Before her, it was a nutritionist who ran a popular food blog. Tyler didn't just date women. He dated women who could contribute to his brand. Chloe, with her social media marketing background and carefully curated aesthetic, was exactly the type of partner who could help Tyler reach the next level of influencer success. She understood the business side of social media in a way his previous girlfriends hadn't, and her professional connections in the beauty industry could open doors for potential sponsorship deals. Looking at it from a business perspective, Tyler, pursuing Chloe made perfect sense. She wasn't just a beautiful woman. She was a strategic acquisition for his personal brand. The question was whether Chloe understood that she was being recruited as much as romanced. Over the next few days, I found myself seeing everything differently. The ring box in my bedroom drawer no longer represented a failed romantic gesture. It represented $8,000 I'd saved that could be put towards something that actually mattered. The apartment I'd chosen with Chloe's preferences in mind suddenly felt like my space again, somewhere I could make decisions based on what I wanted rather than what would make her happy. But the biggest shift was in how I thought about myself. For weeks, I'd been operating from a position of desperation, trying to prove my worth to someone who'd already decided I wasn't what she wanted. Now, for the first time in months, I started considering what I actually wanted from a relationship and whether Chloe had ever really provided it. The answer was uncomfortable but clear. I'd been so focused on making Chloe happy, so invested in being the perfect boyfriend, that I'd lost sight of whether she was making me happy in return. When was the last time she'd gone out of her way to do something thoughtful for me? When had she ever supported me through a difficult time the way I'd supported her career changes and family drama? I started making a list, not of Chloe's flaws, but of the things I wanted in a real partnership. Someone who communicated honestly about their feelings instead of creating elaborate deceptions. Someone who saw challenges as problems to solve together, rather than reasons to find an exit strategy. Someone who valued loyalty and integrity over social media appearances and personal branding opportunities. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Chloe and I had been fundamentally incompatible for longer than I'd wanted to admit. I'd been so caught up in the idea of our relationship, the story I'd told myself about our future, that I'd ignored the reality of who we actually were together. By Friday of that week, I'd made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. I was going to end things with Chloe on my terms, before she had a chance to stage her own breakup drama. But more than that, I was going to do it, in a way that protected my dignity and made a statement about what I would and wouldn't accept in my life. I spent that weekend planning my approach with the same methodical attention I brought to coding projects at work. I wasn't going to be emotional or accusatory. I wasn't going to give Chloe an opportunity to gaslight me or turn herself into the victim. I was simply going to present her with facts and give her a chance to respond honestly, probably for the first time in weeks. The ring, I decided, would play a central role in this conversation. Not as a romantic gesture, but as a symbol of the different directions our lives were heading. Chloe had made it clear through her actions that she wasn't ready for the kind of commitment I wanted to offer. Rather than trying to convince her otherwise, I was going to accept her decision and act accordingly. Monday morning, I texted Chloe asking if we could meet for coffee to talk about our relationship. She agreed immediately, probably assuming I was ready to have a conversation about getting back together. We arranged to meet at a neutral cafe downtown, not Maya's place, somewhere that felt appropriately impersonal for what I had planned. I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner, away from other customers. When Chloe walked in, she looked hopeful in a way that made me feel briefly sorry for what I was about to do. She dressed carefully for this meeting, wearing a sundress I'd always complimented her on, her hair styled in loose waves that caught the light perfectly. "Hi," she said, settling across from me with a cautious smile. "You said you wanted to talk about us?" "I do," I said, pulling the ring box from my jacket pocket and setting it on the table between us. "I think it's time we were completely honest with each other." Chloe's eyes widened when she saw the ring box, and I watched several emotions flicker across her face. surprise, guilt, and something that looked almost like panic. "Jake, I know you found the receipt," I said calmly. "I know that's when you started pulling away and asking for space. I also know you've been seeing Tyler Brooks." The color drained from Chloe's face, but to her credit, she didn't try to deny it immediately. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter how I know," I said. "What matters is that you've been lying to me for weeks about your reasons for needing space, and about whether there was someone else involved." Chloe was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ring box like it might explode. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were filled with tears. But I felt nothing but cold clarity. "I never meant for it to happen this way," she said softly. "When I found that receipt, I panicked. I wasn't ready for marriage, but I didn't know how to tell you without hurting you. So you decided to start a relationship with someone else instead?" "It wasn't supposed to be a relationship," Chloe said, tears starting to spill down her cheeks. "Tyler and I were just friends at first. But then we started talking more, and I realized how different I felt around him. More spontaneous, more exciting. I felt like myself again instead of like someone playing a role." I nodded, surprised by how little her words hurt. "And you thought the best way to handle that realization was to lie to me about needing space while you figured out your feelings?" "I was trying to protect you," Chloe said, reaching across the table toward my hand. I moved it away before she could touch me. "You were protecting yourself," I corrected. "You wanted to explore your options with Tyler without losing me as a backup plan in case it didn't work out." Chloe's face crumpled, and I could see that my words had hit their target. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I asked. "If you'd been honest with me 3 weeks ago about your feelings, about meeting Tyler, about not being ready for marriage, we could have had a real conversation about our future. Instead, you chose to deceive me while I sent you flowers and respected your need for space." I picked up the ring box and slipped it back into my jacket pocket. "I'm not angry about you falling for someone else, Chloe. People can't control their feelings, but I am disappointed in how you chose to handle it." "What are you saying?" she asked, though I could see in her eyes that she already knew. "I'm saying that I deserve to be with someone who values honesty and communication over self-preservation. Someone who sees challenges as things we work through together, not reasons to start shopping for replacements." I stood up from the table, leaving money for my untouched coffee. "I hope you and Tyler are happy together. You seem well suited for each other." As I walked toward the door, I heard Chloe call my name, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was moving in the right direction, toward something better rather than away from something broken. The ring in my pocket no longer felt like a symbol of failure. Instead, it felt like a gift I could give to someone who would actually value what it represented. I just had to find the right person to give it to. Walking out of that cafe felt like stepping into a completely different version of my life. For the first time in months, I wasn't second-guessing every decision or wondering what Chloe wanted from me. The clarity was intoxicating. I had my answer, I had my dignity, and I had $8,000 worth of diamonds sitting in my pocket that suddenly represented possibility rather than failure. The first thing I did was call in sick, to work and spend the day completely alone, something I hadn't done since Chloe and I started dating. I walked through downtown Austin without any destination in mind, rediscovering parts of the city I'd forgotten existed when my world revolved around places Chloe wanted to go and things Chloe wanted to do. I found myself at Zilker Park, sitting by the water and watching people live their lives. Couples walking dogs, families having picnics, friends playing frisbee. For 3 years, I'd looked at scenes like this and automatically imagined Chloe and me in 5 years, 10 years, building the kind of life I thought we both wanted. Now I looked at the same scene and felt excited about the unknown, about building something authentic rather than something that looked good on social media. That evening, I did something that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. I went to Maya's brew right before closing time, not because I needed coffee or wanted to talk about my problems, but because I wanted to see her, really see her, as a person rather than just a sympathetic ear. Maya was alone in the cafe, doing the end-of-day cleaning that I'd watched dozens of times without really paying attention. She moved with this quiet efficiency, wiping down tables and organizing supplies with the kind of care that suggested she genuinely loved what she did. When she saw me walk in, her face lit up with a smile that had nothing calculated or performative about it. "We're technically closed," she said, "but I suppose I could make an exception for my most persistent customer." "Actually, I was hoping I could help you close up," I said, "and maybe take you to dinner afterward, if you're interested." Maya paused in her cleaning, studying my face with those perceptive dark eyes. "This sounds like a very different Jake than the one who's been coming in here for weeks." "It is," I admitted. "I had that conversation with Chloe today. It's officially over." "I'm sorry," Maya said, but her expression suggested she wasn't entirely sorry. "I'm not," I said, surprising myself with how true that felt. "I'm actually relieved, and I'm wondering if you'd like to have dinner with someone who's finally ready to start making decisions based on what he actually wants, instead of what he thinks he should want." Maya considered this for a moment, then untied her apron and hung it on a hook behind the counter. "I know a place that makes excellent Thai food and doesn't mind if you show up looking like you've been wrestling with espresso machines all day." Dinner with Maya was a revelation. Without the weight of my relationship problems hanging over every conversation, I discovered that she was funny, insightful, and passionate about things that had nothing to do with social media metrics or personal branding. She told me about her plans to expand Maya's Brew, her dream of creating a space that felt like a community center rather than just a coffee shop. She wanted to host book clubs and art shows, to support local artists and writers in a way that felt genuine rather than trendy. "The big coffee chains focus on efficiency and consistency," she explained over pad thai that was infinitely better than any of the Instagram-famous restaurants Chloe had dragged me to. "But I think people are hungry for something more personal. They want to feel like they're part of something, not just consuming something." I found myself telling her about my work at InnovateTech, about the dating app we were developing, and my growing frustration with how technology seemed to be making human connection more superficial rather than deeper. We talked about Austin's changing culture, about the tension between growth and authenticity, about what it meant to build something meaningful in a world that often rewarded style over substance. "You know what I like about you?" Maya said, as we shared a dessert that she'd insisted we try. "You think about the impact of what you're creating. A lot of people in tech just want to build the next big thing, but you actually care about whether it makes people's lives better." It was the kind of compliment that Chloe had never given me, focused on character rather than achievements. Sitting across from Maya in that modest Thai restaurant, I felt more seen and appreciated than I had in months of expensive dates and elaborate romantic gestures. When I walked Maya back to her car that night, she turned to face me before getting in. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "I've been watching you come into my cafe for over a year, always with Chloe, and I always wondered what you'd be like if you weren't trying so hard to make someone else happy." "And what am I like?" I asked. "Interesting," she said simply, then stood on her tiptoes to kiss my cheek before driving away. I stood in that parking lot for several minutes after Maya left, processing what had just happened. This was what attraction felt like when it wasn't tangled up with anxiety and insecurity. This was what conversation felt like when both people were genuinely interested in each other, rather than performing their relationship for an audience. Over the next few weeks, Maya and I fell into an easy routine. I'd stop by the cafe most mornings before work, and she'd have my coffee ready along with a pastry she'd been experimenting with. We'd text throughout the day, not the constant stream of selfies and status updates that had characterized my communication with Chloe, but real conversations about our days, our thoughts, our plans. Maya never asked about Chloe, and I never brought her up. It was like that entire chapter of my life had been closed, filed away as a learning experience rather than a source of ongoing pain. I was so focused on building something new with Maya that I almost forgot Tyler and Chloe existed. Almost. 3 weeks after our breakup, Tyler posted a photo on Instagram that made my blood boil. It was a professional shot of him and Chloe at some upscale restaurant, her hand prominently displayed on the table showing off what looked like a promise ring. The caption read, "When you know you know. Some people are worth changing your whole life for." The hypocrisy was staggering. Chloe, who had claimed she wasn't ready for commitment, who had needed space to figure out what she wanted, was now wearing jewelry from a man she'd been secretly dating for less than a month. But what really got to me was the implication in Tyler's caption that I had been someone not worth changing for, someone she'd settled for until someone better came along. I showed the post to Maya when I stopped by the cafe that afternoon. She looked at it for a long moment, then handed my phone back with a disgusted expression. "They deserve each other," she said simply. "It just pisses me off," I admitted. "The whole narrative they're creating about their relationship, like it's this great love story instead of what it actually is." "Which is what?" Maya asked. "A business partnership," I said. "Tyler gets a girlfriend who can help him level up his social media game, and Chloe gets to be part of an exciting lifestyle brand. It's not love, it's mutual benefit." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "You know what the best revenge is against people. Like that? What? Being genuinely happy," she said. "Not performing happiness for social media, but actually building a life that fulfills you. People who prioritize image over substance can't compete with that." She was right, of course. But as I watched Tyler and Chloe's relationship play out, over the following weeks, documented in carefully curated Instagram posts and TikTok videos, I found myself wanting to do more than just be happy. I wanted to show them, and everyone else who had watched our relationship implode, that they had bet on the wrong horse. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Maya mentioned that she was struggling to compete with the new Starbucks that had opened 3 blocks away from her cafe. Her regulars were loyal, but foot traffic had dropped significantly, and she was worried about making rent for the next few months. "What if you didn't have to compete with them?" I asked. "What if you could offer something so different that comparison became irrelevant?" That conversation sparked an idea that would consume the next month of my life. Using my connections in Austin's tech scene and the money I'd saved for Chloe's engagement ring, I helped Maya completely rebrand and renovate her cafe. We turned Maya's Brew into something unprecedented. A hybrid coffee shop and co-working space that hosted community events, featured local artists, and offered tech support for small businesses. The transformation was dramatic. Maya's warm personality and genuine commitment to community building, combined with my technical expertise and business connections, created something that felt authentically Austin in a way that chain stores never could. We installed high-speed internet, created flexible workspace areas, and established partnerships with local artists and musicians. But the real genius was in the programming. Maya's Brew became the go-to place for Austin's creative professionals to network, collaborate, and build real relationships. We hosted coffee and code mornings for developers, brunch and business sessions for entrepreneurs, and evening events that combined coffee with live music or art installations. Within a month, Maya's Brew had a waiting list for workspace memberships and was booking events weeks in advance. Local food bloggers started featuring us not as just another coffee shop, but as a cultural hub that represented Austin's values of creativity, community, and authenticity. The success felt incredible, but what felt even better was building it with Maya. We worked 18-hour days side by side, solving problems and celebrating victories as a team. I'd never experienced the satisfaction of creating something meaningful with a partner who matched my work ethic and shared my values. Maya was brilliant in ways that Chloe had never been. She understood people, read social dynamics with an intuition that amazed me, and had a vision for what she wanted to create that went far beyond personal gain. Watching her interact with customers, seeing how she remembered everyone's stories and made them feel genuinely welcome, I realized what I'd been missing in my relationship with Chloe. Maya cared about things that mattered. She wanted to build something that made her community better, not just something that made her look good. She worked toward goals that fulfilled her, rather than impressed other people. She was authentic in a way that felt revolutionary after 3 years of dating someone who curated every moment of her life for social media consumption. The night we celebrated our first full month of sold-out events, Maya and I were cleaning up after hosting a poetry reading that had drawn over 60 people. The cafe felt warm and alive, still buzzing with the energy of genuine human connection. "Can I tell you something?" Maya said as we stacked chairs and collected coffee cups. "Of course." "I've been in love with you since about our 3rd conversation," she said, not looking at me as she continued wiping down tables. "Even when you were with Chloe. Even when you were miserable and didn't know why. I saw who you really were under all that people-pleasing, and I've been waiting for you to see it too." I stopped what I was doing and turned to face her. "Maya, I know it's probably too soon," she continued quickly. "I know you just got out of a long relationship, and you're probably not ready for anything serious. But watching you these past few weeks, seeing you become the person you are when you're not trying to be what someone else wants, I couldn't keep pretending I don't have feelings." I walked over to where she stood, took the rag from her hands, and set it on the table. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the ring box I'd been carrying for months. Maya's eyes widened. "Jake, what are you—" "This ring was supposed to represent my future with someone who didn't actually want it," I said, opening the box so she could see the diamond that had once symbolized so much hope and disappointment. "But looking at it, now, I realize it never represented my future with Chloe. It represented my readiness to commit to building something real with someone who valued the same things I do." Maya stared at the ring, then at me, her expression unreadable. "I'm not proposing," I said quickly. "We've known each other as more than friends for less than 2 months. But I am saying that I love you, that I want to build something real with you, and that someday when we're both ready, I'd like this ring to represent our commitment to each other, instead of my mistake with someone else." Maya was quiet for so long that I started to worry I'd completely misread the situation. Then she smiled. That brilliant, genuine smile that had first made me notice her as more than just a friendly coffee shop owner. "Jake Martinez," she said, reaching up to cup my face in her hands, "you are the most wonderfully unexpected man I've ever met." When she kissed me, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. This was what love felt like when it was mutual, when it was based on genuine compatibility rather than projection and hope. This was what building a future felt like, when both people were equally invested in creating something meaningful. As we locked up the cafe that night and walked to my car together, I realized that Chloe leaving me hadn't been a catastrophe after all. It had been a course correction, redirecting me towards something infinitely better than what I'd thought I wanted. Maya's brew was thriving, but more importantly, Maya and I were thriving. We'd created something together that neither of us could have built alone, and we were just getting started. Meanwhile, Tyler and Chloe's Instagram-perfect relationship was starting to show cracks that no amount of professional photography could hide. But that's a story for another day. Tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, with exactly the right person, building exactly the kind of life that actually made me happy. 6 months later, Maya and I were planning our engagement party when everything came full circle in ways I never could have imagined. Maya's brew had become such a success that we were opening a second location in South Austin, and I'd been promoted to lead developer at InnovateTech after our dating app launched to critical acclaim. Life felt almost surreal in its goodness, like I was living someone else's charmed existence. Maya wore my grandmother's engagement ring now, the same ring that had once represented my desperation to hold on to someone who didn't want me. When I'd finally proposed 3 months earlier, during a sunset hike at Mount Bonnell, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. There was no anxiety, no second-guessing, no elaborate planning designed to manipulate a specific response. Just 2 people who'd built something beautiful together deciding to make it official. The engagement party was Maya's idea, but she wanted it to feel like everything we'd created together. Authentic, community-focused, and genuinely celebratory rather than performative. We decided to host it at the original Maya's Brew location, inviting friends, family, and the customers who'd become like extended family over the past year. The night before the party, as Maya and I were setting up decorations and arranging furniture, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. "Jake, this is Chloe. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I really need to talk to you. It's important. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow?" I showed the message to Maya, who read it with raised eyebrows. "That's interesting timing," she said. "The night before our engagement party." "Should I respond?" I asked. Maya considered this for a moment. "What do you want to do?" "I want to ignore it," I said honestly. "But I'm also curious about what could be so important that she'd reach out after 6 months of radio silence." "Then meet with her," Maya said simply. "You don't owe her anything, but if it'll give you closure, do it. I trust you completely." That confidence, that complete lack of jealousy or insecurity, Reminded me again why Maya was nothing like the person I'd almost married. Chloe would have turned a message from an ex into a 3-day drama filled with accusations and demands. For reassurance, Maya just trusted that whatever this was about, we'd handle it together. I agreed to meet Chloe the next morning at a generic chain coffee shop across town, nowhere that held memories for either of us. When I walked in, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, her usually perfect hair looked unwashed, and there were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. She looked like someone who hadn't been sleeping well for weeks. "Thank you for coming," she said, when I sat down across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, not interested in small talk. Chloe took a shaky breath. "I wanted to apologize for how everything ended between us, and I wanted to warn you about something." "Warn me? About what?" "Tyler," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's not who I thought he was. He's not who anyone thinks he is." Over the next hour, Chloe told me a story that was both shocking and somehow completely predictable. Tyler's entire lifestyle brand was built on fraud. The fitness supplements he promoted were made by a company he secretly owned, filled with cheap ingredients and false claims. His training certifications were fake. His social media following was largely purchased bots, and his engagement rates were artificially inflated through services that sold fake interactions. "I found out by accident," Chloe explained, her hands shaking as she held her coffee cup. "I was helping him with a sponsorship proposal, and I needed some business documents from his laptop. I found spreadsheets tracking his fake followers, invoices for bot services, everything." But the financial fraud was just the beginning. Tyler had been systematically manipulating the women he dated, using them to enhance his brand before discarding them when they were no longer useful. Chloe had discovered messages between Tyler and other influencers where he referred to her as the marketing chick and discussed strategy for upgrading to someone with better connections once he hit 1 million followers. "He never loved me," Chloe said, tears streaming down her face. "I was just a business decision. He saw my job, my social media skills, my connections in the beauty industry, and he decided I could help him get to the next level." The worst part was that Tyler had been documenting their entire relationship, including intimate moments, for a tell-all social media series he was planning called Building the Perfect Life. He intended to present their breakup as part of his growth journey, monetizing even the end of their relationship for content. "I confronted him about all of it last week," Chloe continued. "He didn't even deny it. He just laughed and said I should be grateful for the exposure I got from dating him. He said I was lucky he chose me at all, and that I'd never find anyone else who could give me the lifestyle he provided." I felt a complex mix of emotions listening to Chloe's story. Part of me felt vindicated that my instincts about Tyler had been correct. Part of me felt genuine sympathy for what she'd been through. But mostly, I felt grateful that I dodged a bullet I hadn't even known was aimed at me. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because Tyler's been asking questions about you," Chloe said. "About your job, your success, about Maya's business. I think he sees you as some kind of threat, or maybe he's looking for a way to discredit you publicly. He's convinced that your happiness is somehow fake, that you're putting on an act to make him look bad." The idea that Tyler saw me as a threat was almost laughable, but I appreciated the warning. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I'm leaving Austin," Chloe said. "I got a job offer in Denver, and I'm taking it. I need a fresh start, somewhere Tyler can't use our history for content or manipulation." As I sat there listening to Chloe describe her escape plan, I realized something profound. 6 months ago, hearing that she was leaving town would have devastated me. I would have begged her to reconsider, promised to help her through whatever problems she was facing, maybe even offered to come with her. Now, I felt nothing but mild concern for her well-being and relief that she was removing herself from a toxic situation. "I'm sorry you went through all that," I said, and I meant it. "But I'm glad you figured it out before it got worse." "I keep thinking about what you said when you broke up with me," Chloe said quietly, "about deserving someone who values honesty and communication. You were right. I wasn't that person then, but maybe I can learn to be." "I hope you do," I said. "Everyone deserves to be loved for who they really are, not for what they can provide someone else." When I left that coffee shop, I felt lighter somehow, like a chapter of my life had finally been properly closed. Chloe's story about Tyler didn't surprise me, but hearing it confirmed something I'd suspected all along. The relationship I'd envied, the lifestyle I'd thought I was missing out on, had been as hollow and performative as it looked from the outside. I drove straight to Maya's brew, where she was putting finishing touches on decorations for our party that evening. When I told her about my conversation with Chloe, Maya listened with the same thoughtful attention she brought to everything. "Do you think Tyler will actually try to cause problems for us?" she asked. "I doubt it," I said. "What could he possibly do? Our success is real. Our relationship is real. Our community support is real. He can't compete with authenticity using fake followers and manufactured drama." That evening, our engagement party exceeded every expectation. Maya's brew was packed with people who genuinely cared about us, who'd watched our relationship develop and our business grow from the beginning. There were no professional photographers creating content, no staged moments designed for social media, just honest celebration of two people who'd found each other and built something meaningful together. My parents flew in from San Antonio, and Maya's family came from Houston. My sister Emma gave a speech about how different I seemed with Maya, how she'd never seen me so genuinely happy. Ryan, my best friend who'd tried to warn me about Chloe months earlier, raised a toast to finally getting it right. But the moment that meant the most came when Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly customer who'd been coming to Maya's brew since the day it opened, stood up to speak. "I've been watching these two young people for over a year," she said in her soft accent. "I watched Jake when he was trying so hard to love someone who didn't appreciate him, and I watched Maya when she was building her dream but hadn't found someone to share it with. When they found each other, it was like watching two pieces of a puzzle finally fit together." As I looked around the room at all the faces of people who'd become our chosen family, I realized that this was what happiness actually looked like. Not perfect Instagram photos or carefully curated lifestyle content, but real relationships built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Late that night, after the last guest had left and we'd finished cleaning up, Maya and I sat on the couch in my apartment, exhausted but exhilarated. "No regrets?" Maya asked, curled up against my side. "About what?" "About not having the big, traditional engagement, the elaborate proposal story. All the things Chloe probably would have wanted." I thought about that for a moment. "You know what I realized tonight? Everything I thought I wanted with Chloe, all those traditional relationship milestones and picture-perfect moments, I wanted them because I thought that's what love was supposed to look like. But what we have feels so much bigger than any of that." Maya tilted her head to look at me. "Bigger how?" "It's not just about us," I said. "What we've built together. The cafe, the community, the way we support each other's dreams. It makes other people's lives better too. That's what I was missing before. I was so focused on getting someone to love me that I never thought about what kind of love actually creates something meaningful in the world." 3 weeks after our engagement party, Tyler's social media empire collapsed spectacularly. Someone, possibly Chloe or one of his other ex-girlfriends, leaked evidence of his fake followers and fraudulent business practices to a popular Austin lifestyle blogger. The story went viral locally, and Tyler's sponsors pulled out within days. His response to the scandal was exactly what I'd expected. A series of increasingly unhinged social media posts blaming everyone else for his downfall and claiming that jealous competitors had orchestrated a campaign against him. He specifically mentioned bitter ex-girlfriends and unsuccessful local business owners who couldn't handle his success. Maya and I watched this meltdown with a mixture of amusement and secondhand embarrassment. Tyler's final post before disappearing from social media entirely was a long rant about how fake people in Austin had destroyed his authentic lifestyle brand because they couldn't compete with his genuine success. The irony was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. 2 months later, Maya and I were featured in Austin Monthly magazine as one of the city's most inspiring young couples. Not because of our relationship drama or social media presence, but because of what we'd built together. The article focused on how Maya's brew had become a model for community-centered business, and how our partnership represented a new approach to balancing personal and professional goals. Reading that article, I thought about the path that had led me here. Losing Chloe had felt like the end of the world at the time, but it had actually been the beginning of my real life, everything I'd thought I wanted. I'd wanted for the wrong reasons. Everything I actually needed, I'd found by accident while trying to heal from what I thought was the worst thing that could happen to me. The ring that had once represented my desperation to convince someone to love me now sat on Maya's finger, as a symbol of two people who'd chosen each other freely, completely, and with full knowledge of who the other person really was. We weren't trying to create a perfect life for social media or to prove anything to anyone else. We were just building something real, something that made us both better people and contributed something positive to our community. On a warm evening, in late spring, almost exactly 1 year after Chloe had asked for space to figure things out, Maya and I were closing up the original cafe location when she turned to me with a mischievous smile. "I have something to tell you," she said. "What's that?" "I'm pregnant," she said, her smile growing wider. "We're going to have a baby." Standing there in the cafe where we'd fallen in love, surrounded by the community we'd built together, holding the woman who'd shown me what real partnership looked like, I felt a completeness that no amount of romantic gestures or expensive rings could have provided. This was what I'd actually been searching for all along. Not someone to complete me, but someone to build something beautiful with. Not a perfect relationship, but a real one. Not a life that looked good from the outside, but a life that felt good from the inside. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be exactly what you needed to find everything you were actually looking for. Sometimes losing someone who doesn't truly value you is the first step toward finding someone who does. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that someone has been waiting for you to discover who you really are all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.